This week's episode of our show has been sponsored by our friends at Ghostfire Games, who have just launched their new Kickstarter, The Seeker's Guide to Twisted Taverns, which is live now on Kickstarter till March 6th.
This is being developed by Logan at Runesmith, and he is creating 14 entirely unique tavern locations for you to explore, filled with all sorts of new characters, items, monsters, and mechanics, and secrets abound to delve into.
These amazingly creative taverns will stretch the bounds of fantasy and maybe give you a nice reminder of those wonderful, cozy days spent in a bar with some good friends.
The campaign is live on Kickstarter until March 6th, so check the links below to join in on the revelry.
Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin, and we are the Dungeon Dudes.
Welcome to our channel where we cover everything Dungeons & Dragons, including advice for players and guides for dungeon masters.
We upload new videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Today, we are coming with some advice from the heart. On our channel, we cover a lot of ratings and rankings and build guides. We talk about the best subclasses, the best spells, the best feats, how to use these cool spell combos and how to get the most out of your D&D character and solve the problems, save the princes or princesses, defeat the dragons, and win D&D. But there's a lot more to D&D than being the best fighter or the best wizard or the best rogue.
At its heart, Dungeons & Dragons is a fantasy role-playing game where you get to create a character that you've imagined and set them loose in a world of monsters and mysteries for you to explore and uncover. But this all really boils down to playing a character that is exciting and rewarding for you and your experience at the table. There's a lot to discuss today, so let's get rolling. Our first major point around this is that despite all of the videos and information and written text that is available out there on the internet telling you what the best subclasses are or the best spells or best feats, including our channel, don't let all of this information dissuade you from playing the character that you have imagined.
We love discussing all the various mechanical options in the games of Dungeons & Dragons. Kelly and I love building characters, and we love the combos. I think it comes into the fact that we're both people who love playing video games. We love RPG video games. We love tabletop games like Warhammer and Magic the Gathering. And so some of the things that we find exciting about the combinations in D&D are that kind of combo nature of creating a character that has cool powers and does interesting and effective things. Nothing is more disappointing than playing a character you hate.
The fact is that you get to decide what makes sense for your character, and you get to control your character, and really, it's you that has to enjoy your character. So when you're looking at whether your character is the most optimized, or whether you're really into the role play, or whether it's a combination somewhere in the middle of those two, the fact is that you're the one who has to play your character. So what makes it matter to you?
Never let someone, even the dungeon master, tell you a paladin wouldn't do that, or an elf wouldn't do that, or a wizard wouldn't do that. They don't get to choose. That's my character, and that's what I'm going to do. And at the end of the day, that's character development, baby.
And really, in the games of Dungeons & Dragons, you might run into this from time to time where you're creating a character and the DM or another player or somebody else has advice or walls that they might put up against your character. This isn't the type of character that would fit into this setting, or you're making choices that don't necessarily agree with the way that I imagine Dungeons & Dragons. This actually brings us to our second point, which is to share the vision of your character with your group. And this is important because sharing your vision and what is exciting to you with the group means that everybody can get on board with the concept, or you can discover what is going to work and what might not work. And then you have to decide if you are playing at a table that maybe a DM who thinks that paladins should act a very specific way, and you want your paladin to be different than that. You have to decide, do I want to design a paladin in the vein of what this DM has set out for me? Or do I need to find a group who works within the same mindset as the game that I want to play? And this is really an important question to ask. And sharing your vision and your story is the first step to figuring out if your vision is going to work with everybody at the table. Because this is a team game, you definitely want to play the character that you want to play, but you have a responsibility to play collaboratively with the other people playing at the table and the dungeon master who is orchestrating the story before you.
Because if you don't share what excites you about your character, you could make the character that you want, but you might not actually get to play the character that you want. If you've created a character that has a deep, dark secret, and you imagine, oh, it's going to be so cool when this secret comes out, but then you don't even tell the dungeon master what that secret is, you don't have a secret. Because the point of a secret is to be revealed. And if you want to have this big reveal for your character and you imagine it being a dramatic moment in the campaign, well, unless the dungeon master's on board with that, it's not going to happen. If you imagine when you make your character, you know what, the number one thing I want to do with this character is stand out at the front of an army and throw a fireball and be a war mage. And your dungeon master is thinking, oh yeah, I can't wait to run this political intrigue campaign where we play politics and shopkeepers. It's really not about you played a wizard with fireball. The fantasy that you imagine is I'm playing a wizard with fireball that's throwing fireballs on a battlefield. And that's the character that you want to play. And that's something that only your group and the dungeon master can provide by collaborating with you. So if you don't share the things that excite you about your character, and in particular, the situations that you imagine playing out with your character that excite you, then you might not get the opportunity to play the character that you want to play because the campaign's not going to go there.
I think that there's this false concept within Dungeons and Dragons that the players want to keep their great and grand schemes from the DM. The secret is that I, as a DM, want to play into the harebrained schemes of my players. I want to play into their backstories. I would like to showcase the crazy things that they've come up with. By sharing your ideas with the dungeon master, you're inviting them to the personal script that you've created in your head for the adventure that you want your character to go on. And through that, you can work together to find common ground and make the story work.
The reason why you play a lone wolf character is so your character can go through the classic lone wolf of learning how to not be a lone wolf anymore. Or your character might have flaws and foibles, and those flaws and foibles can pose obstacles for you, and they can be a thing to overcome. But if they don't come up in a productive and interesting and compelling way, if they're just a barrier that you throw up, it's not really contributing to the collective role-playing experience, and it's not really playing the character that you wanted to play anyways. So you have to negotiate that and figure out what does that mean and how does that pose an interesting tension. And so that's something that we can work together and figure out, well, what does that mean? What does that look like at the table in a way that doesn't shut down the adventure?
You have to ask yourself the question of who do you want your character to be? And what do you want them to do? What makes them awesome is really the core question here. You have to make these decisions when you're creating your character and share that with the group, because everybody wants to make an awesome character. And by knowing what not only makes your character awesome and what you hope to accomplish to make them awesome, but knowing what the other players want to do to be awesome allows everybody to contribute to helping everybody discover how awesome their characters are.
And I will say that for Kelly and I, we're really careful about using terms like awesome and fun, because I think a lot of people think that playing an awesome and fun D&D character means that your character is super high energy, is funny and cracking jokes, and is an action hero. But not everybody finds the funny, quippy, one-liner prone action hero idea fun or interesting even. And so we like to think about what is exciting for you, what do you find interesting, what do you find compelling, and most of all, what do you find rewarding? Because sometimes it's rewarding to play a very dark character that has a deep psychological reality and a tortured backstory. And that's not necessarily fun, but it can be really rewarding and cool to explore in a role-playing game. Just not every group is interested in that. The player's responsibility in a session 0 is to come forward with these interests and say, this is what a rewarding D&D character looks like to me. This is what I want to enjoy. This is what my vision is for the character. And at the end of the day, maybe it might turn out that, you know, the vision isn't compatible. In order for you to play the character that you want to play, you might have to make some compromises, maybe even change the concept. You should play the character that you want to play, but you need to recognize when you might not be in the campaign or playing with the people or the group or even the game system where you're going to be able to do that.
This all brings us to point number 3. And something that we want to talk about is there's always been this slight divide in the Dungeons & Dragons community between people who believe that optimization and min-maxing is the most fun and people that believe that role-playing is the most fun part of character design. The fact is that I don't think that these are mutually exclusive, and there's a lot of negative terms thrown around on both sides of this. And in our experience, I think that we love both parts of Dungeons and Dragons. And whether you lean more to one side or the other is not incorrect. If you are a huge fan of min-maxing and optimizing, it can get a really bad rap if you read about it on the internet. Oh, I hate min-maxers, those people who just want to break the game. Some people are rewarded by that. And what you probably want to do is find a group of like-minded people who are also rewarded by that. And you can all play powerful, optimized characters at the table. If you love the role-playing aspect and you want to make more quirky and weird characters, there are lots of people out there who love that. And in my experience, you can actually mix the two as long as everybody at the table has an understanding of what's going to be rewarding for those players. But as long as I'm playing the character that is going to be a rewarding experience for me, I want everybody at the table to have that experience too.
I personally just feel that the shaming that happens on the internet about people playing mechanically strong or mechanically weak characters has just got to stop. It's gone too far. Like, we got to stop shaming people for enjoying what they like. Some people like building powerful characters and creating cool combinations on that, and having gone through 3.5 and 4th edition, where the difference between an optimized min-maxed Munchkin character and a not was like a massive gap. And in 5th edition, it's like this. And so just because someone put their highest ability score in intelligence, took really good spells, and is playing a divination wizard with the lucky feat, I don't consider that broken. Yes, that's min-maxing. That's optimization. That's a powerful character. But that is completely within the bounds of what should be permissible in D&D 5e. Let people enjoy things. On the flip side, don't shame people for not doing it. That's equally reprehensible. Stop it.
Even the mechanically weakest options still add to Dungeons and Dragons and still allow you to explore your imagination in new and creative ways. If you were to look through all of our videos and pick everything that we said was the worst, you can still have the greatest time playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I think that's really important to know. And another thing is, there is this sort of battle that we're talking about between mechanics and role-playing. But I think something that a lot of people don't take into account is that reflavoring is an extremely valuable tool. When you're imagining your characters, when you're coming up with these ideas, you can make an optimized character, you can make a non-optimized character, and you can use your imagination to reflavor it to suit the theme and idea that you want to portray at the table. The simple tool of reflavoring and descriptive vocabulary when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons can do a lot more than trying to figure out the mechanics.
And in many respects, so many of the mechanical elements in D&D 5e are almost entirely devoid of flavor. Many of the spells in the game are nothing more than a name. Dimension Door as a spell doesn't talk about any dimensions or any doors. It's just called that. There's nothing inherent about the lucky feat that implies that your character is lucky. It just lets you get some extra rerolls. We don't have to put so much stock on what the labels are of our classes, feats, subclasses, and everything. Because in a lot of cases, all the game mechanics all the flavor of any of these things is really just in their name. And what's in a name, really? If you change the name, you can change the flavor with changing nothing else. And probably make something that works even better, that might realize your biggest idea. I think the biggest thing about talking about like what is mechanically strong and what is mechanically weak is because the thing that sucks the most is to be promised something by the game rules, and then the game rules fail to deliver that for you. Now, for us, some of these things might be making promises and breaking them, but that might not be true for you.
And I think when you are designing your character, it's important to note that your character doesn't have to be good at everything. There are a lot of feats and abilities and subclasses and options that might not be the best in the game, but they might be what's right for you. And even if you're designing a character who isn't good at everything, which they probably won't be, I think it's still important to design a character that is good at something. If your character isn't good at anything, then you might need to rethink some of the ideas you have going on.
We shouldn't always shackle ourselves to our characters, our mechanical ideas, and our concepts. And this is an area where, yeah, sometimes you think, oh, wow, this is going to be really cool. I'm going to enjoy this character. And then sometimes you play it, and it turns out that it's not fun for you. That's why retraining and allowing people to revise their characters is so important.
Every option presented in Dungeons and Dragons is asking a simple question, and that is, what do you want your character to be good at? And when you look at all the options presented to you, read it and decide, is this something I want my character to be good at?
You can decide what elements of your character are weaknesses or flaws. If your character has high or low ability scores, it's up to you to decide what that means within the context of your character, and if it's believable and reasonable for you and your group, you can roll with it. You don't necessarily have to make every single choice or non-choice that your character makes this dramatic weakness or this dramatic flaw. It can just be an element of your character that's there that is de-emphasized or emphasized as you want it to be.
Maybe you love optimization, maybe you love role-playing, maybe you're in between, maybe you saw a feat or an ability or something that inspired you to create a character. And again, this goes back to point 2, where by sharing this information with the group, now everybody is aware of that, and the DM can orchestrate situations for everybody to have that spotlight.
Almost everybody builds their character around a concept, a theme, or idea. For some people, that concept might be, I just want to build a character that wields a greatsword and does the most damage. And they don't really care whether they're playing a paladin, a barbarian, or a fighter. They just want to deal the most damage in melee because that's fun for them. That's the thing that is most exciting for them about playing Dungeons and Dragons. And that is 100% completely and totally valid. When I make a character, I usually look at a bunch of mechanical options and I say, what is the story that this combination of mechanical options tell? I might make a character that's like, yeah, I want to try out this new subclass. What are some of the cool ideas of personality traits and of a person that might represent the subclass? I like to think of that as reverse engineering the characters. Whereas a lot of people like Kelly, I think you often start with a character concept and then you look through the books to find the elements mechanically that reflect the concept that you have in your mind. No matter what way you approach your character design process, whether you start with the mechanical ideas or themes or concepts, or the story concept, both are equally valid. And in fact, what often happens is you build a bridge between those two things. It's just what side of the river are you starting on?
This brings us all to our final point. You should play the character that you want to play at the table. However, that does not give you the license to be disruptive or to be an asshole at the table. You need to work in a collaborative setting. And there's a lot of ways that you can design a character, but keep in mind that your character needs to be a collaborative part of the game. They need to work with the other players and the DM. There's no person against person in Dungeons and Dragons. It's a shared experience. Playing the lone wolf or the character who steals from the party or things of that nature might work at your table. And this is why it's important to broadcast those. But be careful when you're creating or designing an idea that immediately antagonizes the other people playing Dungeons and Dragons. For myself, I try to avoid this at all costs. And I've heard many people out there say, no, I like playing a character who steals from the other party members. And although I would say, oh, I don't like that, if everybody at the table says, sure, why not? Then it's going to work and it's going to be rewarding. But just be cautious when designing characters who have an antagonistic personality trait or a mechanical design that might negatively influence play at the table within a group setting.
Your freedom stops where others begin. And in a collaborative game like Dungeons and Dragons, your fun stops where others begins. You can have as much fun as you want. You can have a rewarding experience, but you don't get to do that at the expense of other people's fun, enjoyment, and their right to have a rewarding experience. And this can play the same way as well. I have played Dungeons and Dragons with people who were not min-maxers, who were great role players, but they used the fact that they were a great role player to make the entire game experience about them. People can be toxic whether they're min-maxing or role-playing. People can be jerks and make the game all about them, whether they're min-maxing or whether they're role-playing. People can be disruptive and unhealthy to the general fun and rewarding experience for everyone at the table with any sort of play style. Toxic problem players are going to be toxic problem players no matter what constraints you put on them. You have to trust the other people that you're playing with. You have to have that trust and that understanding and that camaraderie, and then you'll be able to have a really rewarding experience and play the character that you want to play.
When you're setting out to create a character in Dungeons and Dragons, there's no right or wrong way to do it. When you're playing at the table, the most important thing to keep in mind is that it is a collaborative experience. And as long as you have that in mind and you're excited about the idea of collaborating with your friends in a shared storytelling scenario, then any character that you make who feeds into that is the right character as long as you feel rewarded and are having a good time playing Dungeons and Dragons. We could talk all day about this concept and we could give you advice, but it really just boils down to do what's right for you and do what's right for your table. There's lots of books that have come out. There's lots of different rules and options and settings and all of this. What's going to work for you? What do you want to use? What do you not want to use? Are you at a table that explores the ideas that you want to explore? And if you're not, can you get behind the general idea of the table? Sometimes you have to make some sacrifices, but can you get behind the core idea and ideals at the table that you're playing at? If the answer is yes, then you're at the right table and just go nuts and make whatever's going to be great. We're saying that Dungeons and Dragons is a game about imagination, and there are so many different ways to play it. And really, that's the beauty of the game, and that's what we love talking about, is the diverse nature of what this game offers. We enjoy discussing Dungeons and Dragons because we love playing the game and we love figuring out what we have found to be the most rewarding and the least rewarding aspects of what the game offers. And hopefully our advice helps you to discover what works the best for you and what isn't working for you. You will discover the version of Dungeons and Dragons that is going to speak to you and be a rewarding experience for many years to come in the wonderful game that is Dungeons and Dragons.
Not everybody finds the right fit the first time they play D&D. Sometimes you're not playing the right class. Sometimes you're not playing with the right group or in the right campaign. It takes time to troubleshoot these issues and find the perfect fit. and find the right thing that speaks to what you enjoy, what excites you, what's interesting, and what finds rewarding. And by having these conversations, maybe we can help guide you or some other folks to find that right match and have that really awesome and rewarding experience that we have at our tables.
So this has been our discussion on playing the character you want to play in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Tell us about some of your favorite characters that you've played in the comments below.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible support of all of our followers on Patreon. If you enjoy the work that we create here on YouTube and elsewhere, please consider joining our community by following the links in the description below.
You may also be interested to hear that we are coming out with a book. So if you are following our Dungeons of Drakkenheim and Shadows of Drakkenheim campaigns or interested in what they are, we have a book coming out exploring them as a campaign setting for 5th edition. We've partnered with Ghostfire Games, and you can expect a Kickstarter later in 2021 where we will unveil all of the wonderful things that we've been working on. You can find the links to follow the mailing list for that in the description below. And don't forget to check out our live play in the Worlds of Drakkenheim, which airs Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/dungeon_dudes. And you can find all the previous episodes right up over here.
We got plenty more advice for players and dungeon masters in Dungeons & Dragons 5e right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time in the dungeon.